So I decided that we'd add in one more bonus part to set up some extra UI elements and make a quick fix to the night, basically adding the death fade to that, which should only take a second. So let's start with scaling font size. So if you've seen the build version of the game and compared that to the in-editor version, then you might notice that the font seems much bigger in the editor when we hit play like this, compared to our build version of the game. So it's actually very easy to get our UI elements to scale up with the size of the screen. So if you click on the canvas element, and let's bring out the inspector from the right side, there's this thing called the canvas scaler. So by default, we have it in UI scale mode, constant pixel size. We want to change that to scale with screen size. So there's a few settings here, such as the reference resolution, which when you're designing your project, would be the base resolution that you're designing for. So if you build everything at, let's say, 1280 by 720p resolution, then you would want to put in here 1280p by 720. Now, during the project, I don't think I really had a setting on the game view for free aspect, but we could have made it 720p and just use that as the base for a resolution. And then if we put those numbers into here for reference resolution, it'll scale up and down depending on if it's higher or lower than that. So the reference pixels per unit is also a setting. So when our UI gets converted into game units of 1 pixel per unit, then it's going to use this value for scaling up and down. If we shrink this to 16 to match the rest of our project, then 1 unit, of course, is going to be a lot smaller, and therefore the UI elements are going to be a lot bigger. But I want to be consistent with our project, so I'm just going to use 16 as the reference pixels per unit. Okay, so I'm going to take these values, hit play. We'll test it out in the game view, so we have a good size there for our text. But let's go into File, Build, and Run and see if, proportionally speaking, our text is the right size compared to everything else on the screen, which is what we're really looking for, consistency and scale. So let's boot up the game and get hit by the knight. Okay, yeah, and we get hit. It looks pretty much exactly how I want it there. So yeah, that's basically the whole trick. You scale with screen size and make sure that you do this for any canvas that you want to scale up. So this scene has a canvas, but you might make other game scenes that have their own canvases. If you want, you could create a prefab out of the canvas so that you could reuse the same canvas in other scenes or levels in your project. So to do that, so if I wanted to do that, I could just go into UI and then let's rename this canvas in the scene GameCanvas. And I'll just drag it in here as a prefab object. So if I want to put the same, if I want to have the same settings in a different project, I'll just drag that into the scene hierarchy. And that's pretty much it. Okay, so now let's actually add a health bar to our character. So on the screen, we want to display how much health our player currently has, what its max health is, and we also want a slider bar to represent that visually. So let's jump into the prefab of the game canvas, and let's add a child element here. So it's going to be right-click UI slider. So you can see the slider has the ability to press on it and move it left and right by default, but we're going to remove that handle, and we're only going to set the value on the slider through code. So first off, I'm going to rename this slider to be a... So first off, I'm going to rename this slider to be health bar, since that's what it's supposed to ultimately be. Let's bring it into the UI of the project. I'll go to scene view. Okay, so we're looking at the game view. This is where we would have it on the screen pretty much. We want it to be anchored to the top left of our screen though. So I'm going to click here in the rect transform where you have center and middle. So I'm going to hold Shift and Alt to set the position and the anchor to the top left hand corner. Just like that. So now you'll see our health bar pops up here in the top left. Let's offset it by a bit. So I will give it 50 on position X. And I think we need -50 on Y to make it move down. So based on our frame, I think that is a decent position to have it at. So we can use that. Now to remove this little handle, let's expand the health bar. The handle slide area, we don't need that anymore. I'm going to delete it. Okay, yeah, let's open the prefab and we'll delete it from inside of the prefab. So now for the health bar, the parent object, we need a target graphic here. So I'm going to click on target graphic and the fill area. Okay, so we can zoom in and it's already looking a little bit different here. So let's go to scene view so that we can see more details about it, like the gizmos and that kind of thing. So I'm going to double click on health bar and we can see the outline frame of the rectangle of the health bar. So next we want to take the fill child that's at the bottom here under fill area and set the width to 0. And then we want to switch to the rectangle tool. So that's right here in the scene viewer. And we want to stretch, and now we're going to want to stretch the edge of our fill to the fill area. So pull this out all the way to the right. So with the rectangle tool, select the fill area, and we want to pull this out to snap to the edges on both the left and the right. Okay, so if we do all of that correctly, now we can go to the health bar and let's manually adjust the value. And you'll see that our slider bar can fill from left to right. So all we need to do now is have a script which can basically set the percentage of how much health the player has compared to what its max health is. And that will be our health bar. And then we'll also have text underneath to show the number version of that as well. So let's add some placeholder text under the health bar so that we can also set that when we create a script for the health bar. So I'm going to right click and then I'm going to go to UI, text mesh pro. All right. And this is a child game object, so it's under our health bar. I'm going to shrink the text way down. Let's say something like 24. Let's also center it vertically and horizontally. And I'm going to position it below our health bar. So let's kind of get it like that. We can take a look at game view and roughly see how it's going to look. Our health bar is actually really quite tiny. So we're still editing in the prefab mode in context. So I will take the health bar and let's actually just increase its size. So let's take the prefab for the health bar and I'm going to make it quite a bit bigger. So 320. So let's go back out and just make sure we're in the prefab for the health bar. I'm going to take the width and let's set it to 320. Let's be in game view so we can actually see it. And then the height, let's put it at 60. And the text, let's move it down below. Maybe we actually want to use the rect tool for this so that we can kind of snap it to the center and the other edges. So I'll pull the bounds of our text out here to the left. And let's pull this text box down a little bit more. And let's select from the font asset the M5X7 SDF font we have for the game. I'll put in some placeholder text and say health 100 out of 100. Let's put the value to 50% for now so that we can kind of see what it's going to look like. I'll take the normal color and let's just make that green. Okay, and then the background color should be a little bit darker than that, but still green. So let's see, I think that's the pressed color. Let's go here and select a darker green. Nope. Okay, so to fill in the background color, we click on the background child game object and let's select a color, a green, but it's going to be a darker green than what we had before. So something kind of like that should work pretty good. Let's go to game view and take a look at it. I'll hit play to test as well. Okay, and we can see that our health text is way off center from the parent. So we're going to have to click on text TMP. And let's actually anchor it to the center of the parent. So I'm going to click here and let's do Shift Alt and click on the top centering position. Then I'll take the alignment and put it back to left. Okay, I guess the anchor didn't get set there. Hold on. Shift Alt, click here. So I'm going to adjust the bounds of the box again with that rect select tool. And let's see. Okay, I want to move it, let's say 100 pixels negative off the top. This is just kind of a numbers game, so okay, negative 60 seems good. And now I'm going to make the alignment right aligned. Okay, that might kind of work, but it's still a little messy in the main game view. I think if we jump out to the main scene, the values in here are not matching what's in the prefab. So I got to click on the game canvas. Let's click on the health bar. And let's see if these values are different. There's our problem. If we click on the text TMP, we got to reset these to the parent's prefab defaults. So I'm going to right click here, revert. Let's see. And then also the health bar itself is way smaller than it's supposed to be. Okay, so I got to change the width and height values here. So let's do that and then apply that to the prefab again. And then let's double click the prefab, make sure that's still set up correctly. Not sure why that didn't apply before, but as long as we get it there. So it should be looking much better now. Let's take the text and increase the size. So 48. Okay, that might be good. Let's go to the game view. And if we're looking at the frame of our game, it's roughly kind of like this. Let's hit play and see how that goes. And let's check the build of the game and check how that would look. It's a little bit big. So I'll shrink the size, the height to 45. Let's make the width to 80. I'll apply that to the prefab. I see that's updating the GameCanvas Prefab. So later we'll copy and paste the same values to the health bar prefab. So the text here was a little bit big, so 42 might make a better size. If we look at the scene view, you can also move it up a bit, so -45 or -40. We also want to adjust the size to match the width of the health bar itself. And if we go to game view, I think that's quite a bit better. So to make this text a bit more visible, I'll jump into the prefab and then let's add a background to the text here. So we can right click on the text TMP, go to UI panel. I'll rename this to be, let's say, text background. I'll go to scene view and let's change the color, make it less transparent, somewhere around here. And the background color can be something like a grayish black. Okay, so we actually want the text to be behind the background. So I'm going to move the text background up here, and then I'm going to make the text the child of that. Okay, that's a little better. And then let's go to the text background, and let's increase its size. So for the text background, I'll change the anchor to top center. Let's increase the width and the height, something like that. I can hit W to move it up to here. And then the text TMP box. Let's see if we can resize this to fit the text background. So with our text box, I'm going to take the yellow bounds and move it inside of the text background panel. Okay, yep. Let's just make sure that the text doesn't show outside of the text background. And the text, I think I do want it centered vertically. Let's also offset it from the right a little bit. So right offset of 10. That's looking decent. Let's go back out and take a look at the game view. So if we look at that, that's okay. If we hit game, then we can see it's actually outside of the box. So once again, got to go to the text TMP and then reset it to the prefab values. So health 100 out of 100 there. Let's take a look at the game canvas. So down here, the text background. And also the text size down here. Let's reset that to the prefab as well. Okay, I just got to be careful about those values that differ between your main scene and the prefab values. So let's hit play real quick and give it a quick test. It's pretty hard to read the text values there. So let's jump into the game canvas once again. Let's take the text. Oh, it shrunk down to 42. Interesting. Oh, it shrunk down to 24. I did mean that to be more like 42. Then the text background will increase the height to accommodate for that. And let's look in scene view and just make sure that it's matching the bounds. So right about there. Okay, back out in the hierarchy. So now we can hit play. And that's looking pretty okay. We do want to turn off the ability to highlight the health bar though. That's a little bit weird. So let's click on the health bar and turn off interactable. So now if we hit play, we shouldn't be able to click on it or hover over it or anything. But it is using the disabled color. So let's make the normal color the disabled color. So I'll click on the dropper and then go up here to the normal color. And then just take the transparency, the alpha, and make that 255. Okay, now when we hit play, it should be just the same as before, just we can't hover over it. Okay, so now that we have a decent health bar and a health text area, let's create a script so that we can set these values at the start of our game and also when the player happens to take damage. So I'm going to click on health bar. Let's jump into the prefab and let's add a component to it. So I'll call it health bar script, create an add. So let's edit the script. So what we need the health bar to be able to do is to have some reference to either the player directly, or we could use a Unity event in order to respond to the player specifically taking damage. So we could adjust our damageable events so that when a character takes damage, it passes the object itself on that event happening if the character taking damage was the player. Another way we could do it, which is probably more straightforward for now, is that we can have our health bar get a reference to the player at the start of the script. So we can take our player object, let's go into the prefab, and I'm going to change the tag to player, which is one of the default tags. So what we can just do is we can find the object that has the tag player, check if it has a damageable component on it, and then if so, we store a reference to it. So what we can do is find the object in the scene that has the tag player, look for its damageable component, and then just keep track of the values on that damageable component inside of here. So in our start function, we want to do GameObject.find GameObject with tag, and then the tag is going to be player. So let's put that GameObject player over here. And with the player, we can get the damageable component on it. So I'll do damageable player damageable up here at the top. After we find the player, we want to set the player damageable equal to the player.getComponent damageable. And then we're going to need a reference to our TMP text element down here. So we could do a public TMP underscore text, I believe it is. And let's do the health text, or health bar text. I like that better, actually. And we're also going to want to reference the slider itself. So public slider, and you'll have to do control period using Unity Engine UI. And we can say health slider. So when our value changes or at the start of our script, we'll set these values. So let's do health slider dot value equals, let's say calculate slider percentage. And then we'll take the health bar text dot text, and we'll set that equal to whatever we want it to say. So this can be health, or actually like HP better. So let's do HP, and that's going to be plus, let's see, player damageable dot health, and then plus a forward slash plus player damageable dot max health. Okay, that's good. So to calculate the slider percentage, let's add in that function. So we need a earned current health and then int max health. So we'll just return the current health divided by the max health. Maybe we didn't need a custom function for that, but whatever. So to pass those values in, we'll just get the player damageable dot health again and the player damageable dot max health. Okay, so that's fine for on start to set up the UI at the start of our game scene. But we also want to hook into the event so that we only change these values when the character actually takes damage or heals. So let's say update on, okay, and you know what? I'm going to take these out to an awake method. So void awake and just paste it in there. Just because if those aren't set up in awake, I think it might cause some problems. Having these values set on start is just fine. So we got to hook into the events on the damageable component. So void on enable, and then we'll do, let's see, player damageable dot, what are the events inside of it called? Okay, we can go to the damageable script and find out. So up at the top, damageable hit and damageable death. So these events won't really work for us. Let's create another one inside of here. Just when the health changes, we can do like a health changed event. So public Unity event, and let's say int, so health changed. So we'll come down here to where the health is set. So health changed question mark, just to make sure it's not null. And then we'll invoke it with the current health value and the max health. Okay, so now we can reference this event over on the health bar. So player damageable dot health changed. We're going to need to add a listener, which is going to be, let's create that down here. Private void on player health changed. So the int new health, int max health. Let's come back to that in a second. Let's just make sure that this gets called. So add listener on player health changed, and then private void on disable. So if for some reason we're not using the health bar anymore, then we want to remove the listener so that it never tries to call the on player health changed function in this script. So player damageable dot health changed dot remove listener, not remove all listeners, but remove listener on player health changed. And then when the health changes, we can update the values just like we did on start. So I'm going to copy paste these down here. So let's see down here. I mean, we already have the reference to the player damageable technically, but we can just use the values we got right here. So new health and max health. And then down here, we'll do new health and then max health. So this should do a decent enough job for us. The only thing we need to do is make sure in the scene there's only one game object with the tag player. So we should also check that the player was actually found. So if player is null, then we can do a debug log message, which will say no player found in the scene. Make sure it has tag. Then let's put player in single quotes. And that will be our debug message, just in case we forget to have a player in the scene or it doesn't have the tag player. Okay, now back out in our Unity editor for the health bar. Let's scroll down and find the script. So we need a slider. Let's drag the health bar into there to get the slider component, and then the health bar text, we drag the text TMP into that slot, and that's pretty much be all we need. So let's see if everything actually works. Let's go into game view and take some damage. So it is updating over here, but the value on the slider is not correct. So that's probably just a calculation error. So let's see, we're trying to set a float, and we're using the current health divided by the max health. This is probably because we're dividing two integers. So if we have a value of like 5 divided by 10, it's going to give us an integer value and just round down to 0. So there should be a math function for this. So to get around that, let's change the parameters into floats. So if we pass a integer in, I believe it will automatically convert it into a float, and then we're dividing two floats here, which means we're going to get a decimal value representing the percentage. Okay, so now let's go ahead and test one more time. I'll hit play, we get hit, and now our health bar updates to 0.75 value. So the float conversion is working. We get hit one more time, and at that point, our character actually dies. So let's hit play one more time and watch that the HP updates properly, and also the slider bar moves to the left as our health drops. We can also jump in here and see that when we heal, it's also updating, since we created that on health changed event, not just using the damageable or on damaged event. So that's pretty much it for the UI part of this tutorial. So let's just do a couple quick fixes and probably wrap up this last video. Let's hit play, and I'm going to try hitting and killing the knight. So let's take him out. Yep, and you see that he doesn't have the fade on death. So we created the script for that. We just need to make sure that the knight has that. So in the knight's animator, let's go to the death state here, add the behavior, fade, remove behavior, and we could just have fade times 0.5. Let's hit play. Okay, and now he's fading correctly. Let's just test with the eye as well and make sure that will properly die. Okay, good. So the last thing I noticed is that the health pickups can be picked up when our character is fully healed still. So let's hit play, and I can jump into that, and you can see that the health pickup is removing, even though it's not supposed to. So let's go back out to the main scene. Let's find the health pickup, go to the prefab for it. And that's going to be a script issue. So let's edit the script on the health pickup. So the reason in onTrigger enter for the health pickup that the object's destroying itself, even when the character doesn't need to get healed, is because this if right here is only applying to the next line of code. So I think that would mean that this won't run if the character wasn't healed, but this if has no brackets, so the destroy happens either way. So to fix it, we want to do curly brackets here, pull all of this inside of there. Now this if statement, if pickup source, is fine because we only need it to apply to the next line, but just be careful about that if you don't already know. Now another thing I'm just going to do is put a double check to make sure that if we're even going to attempt a heal, that the target is damaged. And we could just do that by checking the health and the max health on the damageable. So we'll do and damageable.health is less than damageable.max health. So now we have two layers of checks. We have this Boolean down here, and we also have this check that the health is less than the max health, or else we won't even look at this code. So now this should be fine. If we go back to the Unity editor, I'm going to hit play. Let's jump into the health pickup, and it's not doing anything, which is what we actually expect. We don't want it to be picked up. Now that we are, and when we do need to heal, and we jump into them, of course we get the health pickup as expected. Okay, so that's pretty much it for this UI and fixes video. It's probably going to be the last one for the course. So if you got to this point, thank you for watching to the end for my 2D platformer crash course tutorial.